technology, law, privacy, and ethical questions that come with our increasingly digital world. He's also a co-founder of Trilegal, a law firm established in 2000 that has grown into one of India's most respected legal institutions. Beyond his work as a lawyer, Mr. Matthan has played an important role in shaping public policy. He has contributed to the development of India's privacy law, served on Chris Gopalakrishnan Committee on Non-Personal Data, and has been a member of RBI Committee on Household Finance. During India's G20 presidency, he also worked as a digital public infrastructure advisor to the Ministry of Finance. He's also an accomplished author. His books, Privacy 3.0 and The Third Way, explore how law, technology, and data shape our lives today. In addition, he's an alumnus of National Law School of India University, Bengaluru, and has also taught privacy law there, sharing his knowledge with the next generation of legal thinkers. Today's session is not just about understanding privacy or technology, it is a chance to learn how we think about complex choices and trade-offs that come with living in a digital age. We are delighted to have Mr. Matthan here, and we look forward to learning from both of his ideas and experiences. Could you give a round of applause?
Good morning, everyone. So I am a lawyer. I'm a technology lawyer, and I just wanted to spend some time with you telling you about what I do. I forget about the law part. I spend my entire day, and I have for 35 years, just looking at how technology works. And you are a generation of students who has been born in technology. And so you know, you use technology every day. And so you may be familiar, is this up or down? Yeah. There we go. So I don't know if you've seen something like this. This is what happens every minute of the day in 2025. So every minute of the day, there are 3.5 million YouTube videos that are watched. Minute of the day. There are, you may be doing this, there are 3.3 million snaps sent. There are 250 million emails sent and 138 million reels on Facebook and Instagram. Every minute. That's a lot of data. Now, one of these things that are moving data around is something called Strava. Do you know what Strava is? Anyone know Strava? It's like a fitness tracker, like Fitbit or one of these things.
How
right?
many of you know Strava?
Everyone knows Strava.
They all
I'm
know
telling you, these are kids who are born digital. They know more about tech than you and me. Strava is a health app that manages how you run, where you walk, etc., etc. It's what old people like me wear to try and feel like we're fit, and we compare, where we've gone, how much we've run, etc., with our friends. And so, one day there was a journalist, last month, there was a journalist in France who noticed that his friend, a guy called Arthur, his Strava was doing something strange. He was going in this zigzag pattern in the middle of the sea. And he was like, that's strange. Because you're not supposed to be able to run in the sea. Look at the date. It's the 13th of March, 2026, last month. Like a few weeks ago. What's been happening in the world for the last few weeks? There's a war. Look at where this is. Now, of course, this is Strava France, so you're seeing everything in French. But roughly speaking, where is this? This is pretty much in the zone, right? This is sort of Israel is down there, is Libya, there's Cyprus, which is pretty much in the zone. Now, his friend happens to be a sailor on the Charles de Gaulle, which is France's only aircraft carrier. And at this point in time, France was not involved in the war. But because his Strava showed that he was on the deck of the aircraft carrier jogging laps, this journalist from Le Monde was able to break the news that France is now actively entering into the war. It's pretty cool, right? But this sort of stuff has been happening for a really long time. Because, health trackers are things that we all wear and we think it's doing one thing, and it is doing that one thing really well, but it's doing all sorts of other things. It's providing granular personal information about where we are at what time and what we are doing. And so sometime before this, they used the same Strava information to find the location of secret US military posts. If you can see, this is in Djibouti. And you can see all the white lines and the orange lines. Those are the jogging tracks that are used by people wearing Strava in wherever they are in the world right now. And as a result of this, the Guardian was able to find, using Strava data, was able to find secret US military posts around the world. This is Djibouti, but we found these military posts around the world. And in the last Trump presidency, the New York Times broke this rather incredible story where they actually found the location information of one of the Secret Service people with Trump when Trump was actually entertaining Shinzo Abe, who was then the Prime Minister of Japan. And they tracked him all the way around that whole day. This is the President of the United States, also can be tracked with personal information. So, and you know that all your phones, I don't know if you're allowed to have phones in school or not, but all of you have phones, and all your phones have location information on it, and that information is telling whoever has the information a whole bunch of details, and pretty much it can tell you where you went and where you came from. And this information is extremely confidential and it declares a lot about you. So for instance, if you headed out from here and you go there every day, but every day you spend 25 minutes in some other location, if you know what that location is, perhaps it's a pet store or perhaps it's a comic book store, we know what your interest is, and it is possible to identify things about you. So the whole, the point of all of this is that there's a lot of data, but what's critical is personal data. Data that identifies you individually as a person. And why is this important? I'm going to go through a whole bunch of reasons why it's important, but the most important, the fundamental thing where we start with is that when you put enough personal data together, you can create a profile. You know what a profile is? Essentially, this is a series of information about you that can give me an indication of who you are, what you like, etc., etc. Now, why would someone do that? If you have gone to Amazon, now I said, what's happening in the last few days, and it's the war, and you can see that my Amazon cart is filled with stuff about America. I'm thinking about, what is America? How was America founded? What are the crash of 1929? This is what Amazon populated my cart with on the basis of what it thinks I would like. So Amazon is able to give me recommendations, and I love it. We all love it because we're lazy. We want to know what to buy, we don't know what to buy, and Amazon gives us that information, and it is easy for us. And so recommendations is a good reason why we should build your profile. This other place makes very good recommendations as well. And when you go to Netflix, you know that once you've watched something, immediately, if you look carefully, there's a little red line that says, we think you'll like this. And so you don't have to think about what's the next movie I have to roll on. It actually gives you the next movie. And what Netflix is doing is Netflix is actually fighting for your attention. You know, the founder of Netflix said, I have no competitor in the world other than sleep. He's competing with you for sleep. And if he can keep you awake long enough, he knows that you are so interested in what he's giving you that you will subscribe again. And so there is an economy around attention, and that's what's been building. And the other entity that you all use much more perhaps than Netflix that competes for your attention is YouTube. And YouTube knows what I like. If you look at this, there's some late night TV, there's some rock and roll music, and if you look on top, all the things that I like are science fiction films, podcasts, blues music. You can already get a sense of the kind of person I am. Just by looking at this, you know what sort of interests I have. No one knows this better than YouTube, Amazon, and all these platforms that we currently use. Now, why does YouTube do it? Netflix we can understand because it wants you to subscribe again, but you don't pay for YouTube. Why is this of interest to YouTube? Any sense? Yeah?
Yes, we should advertise.
Excellent. So YouTube has figured out that there is money to be made out of this. So they have made an economy out of attention. And it is actually called the attention economy. And so what YouTube does is YouTube actually sells your attention to advertisers. Now, I don't know if you know how advertising works, but this will actually tell you. The moment you click, at 0 milliseconds you open the app or you click on a particular video, 10 milliseconds, your entire profile has been packaged. They start an auction, and in 30 milliseconds, over 50 advertisers have bid for your attention. And 50 milliseconds, the auction is complete, the advertiser has paid, and they have served your ad. This is why whenever you go through YouTube at the side, you will see an ad already serving, and that ad is perfectly tailored to your interests. This is why they want the profile. Now, of course, the entity that mastered this was Facebook. Facebook apparently generates Meta across all its, Facebook, Instagram, everything, generates $196 per American. And they did that last year. This is the revenue that they make. 196 sounds very small, but Facebook has got the population of which would be larger than any country or any two countries in the world at this point in time. So it's a lot of revenue that they generate out of this. But really, the master of all of this, the OG as it were, was Google. Google invented the ad engine and this auction that we saw. And Google knows your profile better than anyone else knows it. In fact, I don't know if you can do it now or do it when you go home. Two of you type the exact same search request into Google. I guarantee you'll have different results. How can that be? That's because Google already knows what it is you are searching for, what it is you like, and it will tailor its results to provide you the answer that it thinks that you would like to hear. And Google is very, very good at this. Google knows you in such a granular way that even if you and your best friend do everything together, your search results will be different. Maybe not on the first page, because maybe you've been doing something recently for school and you've been researching something, but you go down a little further, you'll see it's starting to diverge. And this is the nature of Google. Google has got us down to an individual in this planet of 7.5, 8 billion people. Right? So there's a problem with this. And that problem is something we call filter bubbles. Now I know you learn critical thinking in school, but filter bubbles is when you are sitting in a particular world that has been created by these algorithms that decide to give you what it is that you think that you want. And the way this plays out, if you look at the political economy, I'm sort of taking a very American example, but if you look at the blue dots, these are all the Democrats, and you look at the red dots, these are all the Republicans, and you see that the whole world is divided in the US into these two different camps. You'll see Breitbart and Fox News there, and you'll see Washington Post and New York Times on this side. And everyone who likes what the New York Times says will read the New York Times and will not read anything else. Because you've been put into this bubble where you really don't want to hear the garbage that that other person is saying. And so you will just ignore it. And you will only listen to this side. This is, in my mind, pretty dangerous. Because what it ends up is that you get into an echo chamber. And an echo chamber is where you are talking and then you just hear echoed back to you exactly the same thing that you said. So you hang out with people who are constantly telling you the same thing that you want to hear. And this was never the case before digital. Because when we all meet, we all have different views. And we are polite in society and we talk to each other. But when you can do all your interactions online, it is possible for you to get into what we call an echo chamber, where you only hear the information that you would like to hear. You don't hear any, and you're not even exposed to that information. And that, for critical thinking, is a very dangerous way that society is moving. But this is the reason I told you this history is because it started from recommendations and it's gone down to echo chambers. And that's the nature of the evolution of this technology. I don't know if you know Cambridge Analytica. Anyone remembers Cambridge Analytica? It's a long time ago. I want to say 10 years ago. 1, 2, not bad. Okay? Some of the older people are putting their hands up. Of course they know. But Cambridge Analytica, during the Trump won election, that is when Trump became president for the first time, and actually during Brexit, which is when the UK left the euro, Cambridge Analytica weaponized echo chambers. They found that if I can give targeted advertising into a particular echo chamber, I can manipulate the way those people think and vote, because I know very well what they're already inclined to think. And so Cambridge Analytica, with a very granular understanding of how small groups of people think, planted posts, advertisements, and got to the point where they could actually influence politics. So it is dangerous. It is possible for us to go down a path where actually we don't have choice, even though we think we have choice. So let's talk about the harms that this digital world can do. And I'm getting to the reason why I study this, because my entire profession is understanding the way this works, such that I can advise companies on what they should do. I can advise governments on how they should think about this. It's no point seeing the outcomes without understanding how we got here. And if we can understand how we got here, then perhaps we can write the contracts, write the laws, pass the policies that will get us to a better place. But very often we see the outcomes and we react to a very different thing. And so as you think about what you want to do with your careers and the direction you want to go, this is a very interesting and important way to go about this. Understand the problem, and then once you understand the problem, find a real solution as opposed to finding a knee-jerk response. So what are the harms? We've gone through a bunch of harms, right? So the first is it limits choice. When you think that you have two choices, and those two choices have been given to you because of the echo chamber, you actually don't only have two choices. You're only shown two choices, but there may be 20 choices that exist outside the echo chamber. And so the challenge really is, how do we give people more choice and better choice in a world where the algorithms are designed to reduce your choice? This is a fundamental question, and it's an important thing, because if you don't solve this, you are going to do yourself harm. As a result of this, you lose control, because you think you can only choose A or B. And you think that these are the only levers of control you have. But actually, your levers of control are much wider. And I want to be clear, all these companies are clients of mine, so I'm not going to say anything bad about them. They're not doing it to remove your choice. They're doing it because their shareholders want them to become more profitable. They're doing it because if they can sell you more things, more advertising, more goods on Amazon, more books, whatever, their shareholders will be happy, and that's all they align themselves to. And so it's not really their fault because you set up a capitalist world where that's their incentive. But we have to then set the rules of the road such that even though they are achieving their capitalist objective, that we can actually point them in a direction which is good for society, and that really is the challenge of what we have to do. So, the final thing is it invades your privacy. A lot of these algorithms and platforms know more about you than you do yourself. I give you a writing. They will show you interests that you never knew you had, because they understand hundreds and thousands of people like you are interested in such and such thing, and they say there's a very good chance that you will also be interested in it, and they will show it to you. Very often I've seen movies that I would never have clicked on if Netflix hadn't showed it to me. I bought books that I would have never seen if Amazon had not recommended it. So they know you better than you know yourself. And that's a great thing when I want a recommendation, but it's not such a good thing when I want to know what it is that I should choose. And this is fundamentally because they have invaded your privacy and they know more about you. They know the things about you that are secret, that even your parents don't know, that your best friends don't know. So what we do around the world is we try and come up with a framework to deal with all this. And that framework is called data protection law. And data protection law fundamentally is protecting your personal data. And your personal data is what they need in order to be able to find these conclusions about you. The challenge is how do you protect your personal data but still allow them to achieve all these goals and just allow digital to do all the things that digital can do so well for all of us. So the fundamental basis of data protection law is what we call consent. That before I do anything with your personal data, I need you to allow me to do so. And I need you to consent that to allow me to collect the information, to process it in such way, to do all these things with the information. Now, let's go back to Google. Right at the bottom there, I'm sure no one has ever looked at this, I'm just going to show you, right at the bottom there are 3 words. Privacy, terms, and settings. Forget about settings. But has anyone clicked on this? Anyone? You have? So if you clicked on it, you'd have found this, right? This is your privacy policy in Google. I'm showing it to you because you have never agreed, you have agreed, but you don't know that you agreed to what Google will how Google will share your information, how long it will retain your information. You all have apps on your phone. Before you install your app, every app will say, please agree to the terms and conditions in the privacy policy. There is no app that does not say it. How many of you have read the privacy policy of all the apps on your phone? Raise your hand if you've read all. No? Any? You read any privacy policy? Really? Okay. This is a good school. If so many people have read at least one privacy policy, because I do this talk to lawyers, and lawyers keep their hands down. Lawyers will not read agreements unless they're being paid to read it. So I'm very glad that students are reading it out of interest. But this is the core of how you manage your personal information. But the fact is that if we read all the privacy policies in all the apps on our phone every year, it will take 76 days. This privacy policy alone is 47 pages. So that's the reason why we don't read it. But when I said that you can protect your personal data with your consent, I meant that you have to read it, understand what it says, and then consent to what they're doing. But if you consent without understanding, then they can do what they want with your personal information. And as a matter of fact, the privacy policy of all sorts of companies for many years have had all sorts of strange things. And if there's one reason why you would read it, is because there is a privacy policy which says that on the 7th day of the full moon, I will sacrifice your firstborn. That's what you've agreed to. They just put it for fun. But everyone who signed up to that game, it was a game, has agreed to this without thinking. Isn't that, I mean, that's silly, but it just shows how little people read these things that they're consenting to. And if you don't know, Meta, which is also a client of mine, very recently, last year has announced that it will take all your public images and train AI on it. This means everything that you post on Instagram, under the privacy policy, you have now agreed to allow Meta to use your images for training. And if someone has left Instagram because of that, I'm very happy that you have actually read the privacy policy and understood and exercised your choice, but most people don't. Okay, what about India? India is the most digitalized country in the world on many accounts. We have 1.4 billion people on Aadhaar. This is by far the largest digital identity system anywhere in the world. It is by far the largest identity system anywhere in the world. We also do something like 20 billion transactions a month on UPI. It is by far the largest payment system, bigger than Visa and MasterCard globally. And we've got wonderful applications like DigiYatra, where you walk to the airport and it just looks at your photograph and knows whether you can board or not board. Now, all of this involves personal information. And we must worry about how India deals with personal information. And for a very long time, we didn't have a law. And then in 2023, we had, as a result of the digital public infrastructure that we created, we had a right to privacy judgment. The right to privacy judgment was in 2018. And as a result of the right to privacy judgment, we had a law which is called the Digital Personal Data Protection Act that I've been involved in for a very long time, and that's the large part of my work right now, because this law comes into force next year, and all companies in India, anyone that manages data, is going to have to comply with this law. If you violate the law, for every penalty, every violation, there is a fine of 250 crores. So it's a serious law, which means each violation attracts 250 crores, and everyone's very serious about this law. So let me end with just asking you questions on what this means for you. We've seen a lot of the harms. I've spoken to you about the lack of choice, the invasion of your privacy, and all of these things. And yet, I have to say that the benefits of technology are remarkable. Every single day, we benefit from everything that technology gives us. If you think back, I mean, when I first went into law school, there were no computers. I know this really dates me, but in my final year, when I had to submit a project, that was the first project that was printed on my father's dot matrix printer in his office and submitted. Because otherwise there were no printers, no computers. And when I first started work, in the first year of work, there was no internet in India. Literally, there was no internet in India. They're all laughing. They're like, what is this old man who doesn't understand the world who knows how to survive in a world without internet? But yes, that's the way the world was. And so if you think through all the things that have happened since internet, since computers, and since these wonderful little supercomputers that we carry around in our pocket, there is no doubt that the benefits are very powerful. So I am not one to say that let us get paralyzed by fear for the harms that it will cause. But I think, and this is the reason why I'm doing this talk, and I'm hoping a lot of you will be interested, is because privacy is a trade-off. You have to understand that for all the good that you're getting, there is some harm that you are willing to incur. My job as a lawyer and as a policymaker is to make that trade-off explicit. The problem is sometimes companies sell you the good without properly explaining the bad. And companies may not explain the bad because you won't buy the product, but then it is our responsibility in society to explain to people what the harms could be. If you choose a technology for the benefits that the technology can give, after you know what the harms could be, no problem at all. That should be your choice. Because each of us will make a different trade-off when it comes to what it is that we want to use. So I'm going to leave you with that. There is no technology that is evil or good. All technology can be both good and bad at the same time. It is how the person who uses it chooses to use it that either makes it dangerous or not. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
You want the screen off?
Yeah.
Got too much light on your face. Can we have the lights on the stage, please?
Thank you, sir. I think this connection that you made between technology and then finally echo chambers, I think that is a huge connection that we will explore through this talk. But also, the question that immediately comes to my mind is there any choice that we can make that is already not made? And also, are we doomed, right? So we'll sort of start with that, but would love to know your journey. You started with technology, your interest has been technology. At what point of time did it move into law? So if you could start with that, then we'll move on to the other.
So I did technology law when there was no such thing as technology law. So actually I started with law. But as it happened, when I did that first project that I told you that I submitted in the last year on a computer, that's when I was interested in computers. And I just have been interested in technology. I think very early on I realized that if you are not afraid of technology, then no technology is too difficult to understand. And today I take that approach. If there's CRISPR and this is biotechnology, there'll be some papers, it's hard to understand them in the beginning, but you study it and then you will figure it out. And I can't advise people on the law for biotechnology if I don't understand biotechnology. Otherwise, I'm advising them on the law, and that anyone can do, right? So the point is, how do you understand what it is that you're regulating? So I would say that I first started with the law. I was always interested in technology, always. I used to game on a ZX Spectrum in those days, really old now, right? Okay, so the ZX Spectrum, you used to use a cassette. Now I'm talking about a technology, even the cassette, you don't know. It's like a little spool with, yeah? You know, but the kids don't know. They have no clue what a cassette is. You guys know what a cassette is? Okay.
It's probably part of their retro device.
It's retro, okay, it's a retro device, so you know, right? But that was what we used to program. You had to stick your cassette into a cassette player, connect it to the ZX Spectrum, and then play it on your TV. And there were 8-bit games, not like the original Doom, but like real 8-bit games. So it was really, okay, that's how old I am. So ever since then, I've not been afraid of technology. And so I take any technology that I have to regulate, understand the technology, and then I apply my legal training to it.
So it could be, for instance, you could have been an engineer, you could have worked with a company in a tech role to regulate or make policies. Why specifically law?
That's the path that I took. I was
Lawyer first.
I was lawyer first. And so I'm fundamentally a lawyer. My mother used to tell me, you argue so much that I hope you become a lawyer because that's the only thing that you will definitely work at. So I debated, I did all of these things, and I became a lawyer. I went to law school. We were the second batch of law school. So in those days, law school, there's a nice picture of law school, but none of those existed. We were in a shed in Central College, and we were there for 2 years, and then we went to National Law School. I was the second batch to graduate out of National Law School, and it so happened that I got a job in Bangalore, and all my clients were tech companies. One of my first clients was a company called Texas Instruments, which was the first company to bring internet into India. And so I spent a lot of time with another company called HealthStrive, which was the first company to do outsourcing into India. And so a lot of my initial days was, I have to work with these tech companies. I don't understand what they do. I better understand what they're doing such that I can advise them properly. So the answer is really, I was a lawyer. I was immersed in a city that does a lot of tech. I was not afraid of technology. And so I found that this was the natural thing that I do well, which is the intersection of law and technology.
Since you speak about regulation and you work in that, at what point of time in the digital life of India did you notice that this is what's happening? Companies' incentive is to take the data from you and that there's a need for regulation.
So very early on, the book that I wrote that I'm actually, I don't talk about much because it's outdated and a bit embarrassing, is a book called The Law Relating to Computers and the Internet in the year 2000. So that is the first book I've ever written. So when I wrote that book, I figured that this was happening and that India does not have any law relating to governing technology. So the book was published in 2000. India's first law on this is the Information Technology Act that came out in 2000. So I actually published my book before the law came out. If I had waited a little longer, it would have been a more relevant book, but then I had to rewrite the book, so I'm glad it got published before, and now the book is utterly irrelevant. But in the year 2000, but actually in the year 98, which is when I started writing the book, I realized that this is happening. And I felt that it was important to now start talking about it, because even then I realized that India is going to be different from the rest of the world. The way India approaches tech, what India needs for tech is going to be very different from the way the rest of the world does. So the whole book was, this is the way the US is regulating tech. So what do we think about tech regulation in India and how do we do it? And that's what my journey has been ever since.
So was the concept of privacy and data protection in your thoughts at that point of time, and was it a part of the legal landscape anywhere else?
So in the year 2000, we didn't have what we call big data. It was actually very expensive to collect and store data, and so this was not a problem. Because the protection for privacy is that people don't collect your data. Why do they not collect your data? Because it is expensive to collect and expensive to store. So there was a natural barrier to that would protect our privacy. But once big data happened, and it was very easy to collect, store, and also because of high bandwidth connection, it was very easy to transfer from the cloud, everyone was collecting, and then it became a problem. So actually the time that I thought about this was when Aadhaar was announced. And Nandan was the person who built Aadhaar, and Nandan used to live here and travel to Delhi once a week. And because I'm a lawyer, I was doing the same thing. And one day I was on the plane with Nandan, and I said, Nandan, this Aadhaar thing is great, and I think it's a great idea, but have you thought about privacy? Because what's going to happen is someone is going to file a lawsuit against you and bring the whole thing down. And so Nandan, credit to him, immediately figured out that this is what it was, and he spoke to the Prime Minister, and we started work on a privacy law. This was in 2010, 11. 2012, I had a draft privacy law. This is the first privacy law in the country, and then the government changed. And so that privacy law went into cold storage, and then we went through the whole thing, and then 2016 was the Aadhaar case, 2018 was the judgment, 2018 they started working on this new privacy law. It took 5 years for the law to come into force, and now 2023 the law is enacted. Just to say that you have to actually be really old in order to make any progress in this world. It takes a long time to make laws and to make things.
So now we understand that privacy includes, let's say, our personal thoughts as well. For instance, our personal interests that are now shown in the recommendations, etc. But was this always the definition of privacy? Is there an evolution to that definition that went into the legal landscape? Could you just give us a little understanding.
So privacy has always been a reaction to technology. So whatever new technology came in has influenced the thinking on privacy. So the very first document called The Right to Privacy was in Harvard Law Review by a very famous judge called Louis Brandeis. Brandeis was a judge of the Supreme Court in the US. And his co-writer was Warren. So Warren and Brandeis write this famous thesis called The Right to Privacy. That's where right to privacy comes about. Why did they write it? At the time that they wrote it, personal photography became a thing. So the Kodak camera, earlier you used to have to sit in a studio and take a photograph. Now you could have these miniaturized cameras that you could walk around the street and take photographs. And Sam Warren's wife was a big socialite. And she was in all the parties and all of that kind of stuff. And the press was starting to take photographs of her and talk and write about her. And he felt that this was an invasion of privacy. But there was no such thing as a right to privacy. And so he articulated this right to privacy in this very famous article in the Harvard Law Review. It was the first or second edition of the Harvard Law Review, which is now the #1 law review journal anywhere in the world, where he talks about the right to privacy. But the reason I'm telling you the story is because the right to privacy is a reaction to a new technology called photography, and that to mobile, portable photography, where anyone walking on the street could point a photograph at anyone and capture what they're doing. Now, if you can think about the fact that, of course, today you all do it, everyone has a camera on their person at any point in time, you can take a photo of anyone. So right now, no one has any privacy, and so we are used to it. But think of a world where you could do anything in the world and there would be no evidence of it, because it is impossible for anyone to take a photograph of you. It just does not exist. The only photographs you take are in studios. In that world, where people have no filter to say that, if I'm behaving in this way and someone takes a photograph, it may be in the newspaper, people act in a very different way. And once photography came in, people realized that now there's a new technology that's coming in that is going to invade, and in those days, privacy was the whole world. Now you can do whatever you want in your home because no one's going to take a photograph of that. But when you go out into the world, you put a mask on. You're all different than what you are in the privacy of your home. We are all different. And that is because technology has made it, now if you're walking, there are CCTV cameras everywhere. So no matter what you do, someone is taking a photograph of you at all points in time. So there is absolutely no privacy. But think of a world where there was, even the technology of capturing it was not there. That was the world that changed, which forced Warren and Brandeis to write this new concept of right to privacy. And every technology that has come, video, CCTV, surveillance, that is, these bugs that people put, all of these technologies have violated privacy in new ways, and every time they have done that, there has been a new case that has said, now this is the new boundary of privacy. And digital is the one that is all pervasive, because the digital violation of privacy is taking place in your pocket, in your phone 24/7, because this phone is never switched off, it's always connected to the internet. So there has never been something that can invade your personal space as much as modern digital technology.
So you mentioned a lot of harm, at least 3 specific harms with breach of privacy. And before we go on to that, just to wrap up this theme on privacy, is there a cultural notion to privacy, and does governments of different countries have different cultural notions to approach what privacy is and how to regulate technology?
Yeah, this question is asked in many different contexts. In an Indian context, we say we are not a private nation because, we have joint families. Everyone lives with everyone. You go to your friend's house and you don't really care. You open the door and you just run in, and you speak to someone on the street and you say, "Where are you? What are you doing?" You do this abroad, they'll look at you aghast. They'll be like, "Why are you being so rude?" But here it's very normal to go up to someone and say, "What do you do?" What job do you do? Some people in Kerala, where I'm from, they'll say, how much do you earn also, right? I mean, that's just how it is. So, India, we think, is not a private society. But even within the joint family system, there is deep privacy. There are spaces that are respected, and there are boundaries that people apply to the way in which they function. So I think in answer to your question, the privacy notions that each society, and I won't say country, I will say society, adopt for themselves will vary. And they will vary based on circumstances. But the fact that we need privacy is universal. Everyone, everywhere needs privacy. Sometimes because you're so poor that you're living in a chawl where you're sharing one room with so many 10, 20 different people, different families, you feel you have no privacy. So you don't have any privacy if you're sharing rooms with people you don't know. But you have privacy here. And you can keep your thoughts inside. And as long as you can keep your thoughts inside, that itself is a privacy that is important. And that's the reason why I worry about digital technology that knows you better than you know yourself. Because in a sense, the digital technology has this way of getting into your brain and actually understanding what you are. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that we've got to recognize that this is what it does. And then if we know that this is what it does, we can be equipped to deal with it. And I think that's the way to think about it.
Just to carry forward this point, and connecting it to echo chambers, we've had all kinds of influence in our lives. We have politicians, we have families, we have relatives, except digital technology does it at a much larger scale where they're able to create echo chambers. So suppose as a government, if we were to differentiate the harms that are exclusively caused by digital technology, how do we differentiate that, and who will take the responsibility for it? Is it the people responsible for getting into those echo chambers, or is digital media way more powerful that we have absolutely no choice in that?
No, I mean, I think it's up to us. See, digital technology is there and it's here to stay. Governments can do some things, they can't do something, it's okay. What we all have to do is we have to consciously expose ourselves outside our echo chamber. Now, just because you don't agree with what Breitbart News or Fox News says, I'm just giving you an example on the slide, but you can think of any, Republic TV if you don't agree with, or you don't agree with NDTV, don't stop watching it. Watch it. No harm is going to come from watching it. If there's someone who says something, has a political view that you can't stand, it's okay. It's a free democracy. Anyone can say what they want. We should listen to what they're saying. What I worry about is you never even hear what they're saying. And once you think of that person as someone else, this is what you call the othering of people. At that point in time, we start to think less of them and we will not engage with them, and that is more dangerous than anything that we can do. So if there are diverse views in this room. There are people who believe in something, and people who completely don't believe in it. And you should be able to talk to each other. Now, my worry with technology is that technology puts us into these chambers for a completely different reason. It puts us into the chambers because it wants to maximize attention. And if it wants to keep you on the site for as long as possible, it will keep feeding you information that you like to keep you there. That's why they're doing it. We have to stir out of that and go and see things which are perhaps a little unsettling for us, so that we can actually keep our minds open and we can keep thinking different ideas, which the technology has every incentive to prevent us from thinking. That's the nature of the technology. Because the technology, as I said, is an attention economy. If you wander out into some place that you say, oh my God, I don't like this, you may switch off YouTube. That's more dangerous for YouTube than going on feeding you some cat videos that you really like. And they will keep feeding you that cat video such that you don't move off and switch the damn thing off. And I think that's the thing that we've got to understand.
Then what is the role of regulation? I understand that we have the agency to opt out of, let's say, a particular YouTube channel, move to another one, get different perspectives. then at what point and on what basis is there regulation from a greater authority like a government?
So I don't put too much store by regulation to solve every problem, right? And I think that there are many levers that we have. The biggest lever for this particular problem is education. So I'm very glad that I have the opportunity to speak to all of you. Because even if you don't agree with what I'm saying, somewhere in your head is internalized. And you know that, as you're thinking about something, I hope at one point in time you'll be like, look, I've been sitting and watching these cat videos for 1 hour. Maybe I'm in an echo chamber. And if I've made that much, somewhere if this triggers at some point in time and you shift to go to something else, that's enough. I can't pass a law to make you do that. And I can't pass a law to tell Amazon not to do this, because quite frankly, Amazon is doing a wonderful service by filtering up good commodities and books to sell to me, and I don't want to get rid of that. And I think that's the point. We cannot have regulations to solve everything. But I think as long as we are aware of these issues and we don't allow them to use this for harm, then we're okay.
Connecting this to the present context and the context in which students use devices, and you mentioned trade-offs, right? So what kind of trade-offs are we talking about which are recognizable? Unlike maybe later at some point of time, I realize that I'm being influenced by a video channel. But then how do, for example, students have the capacity to make the right set of trade-offs? What do you think they should be doing?
Okay, I'll give you 2 examples, Indian examples, right? So when you go to the airport, you can stand in a long queue and provide your Aadhaar and your boarding pass, or you can go in a short or non-existent queue, let it take your photograph, open the door and go automatically through. If you stand in the long queue, you're only showing them your Aadhaar, they're not keeping any Aadhaar or anything like that, right? So the guy at the CISF person will take a look at your photograph, look at you and send you through. If you're going through DigiYatra, you have to connect your Aadhaar to DigiYatra Foundation. You have to upload your boarding pass to DigiYatra Foundation. DigiYatra Foundation will send your Aadhaar photograph to the airport. You will stay in the airport for 24 hours after you catch your flight, just in case, the flight crashes or something and they want to find out who passed through where. And then they will delete it. Or they tell you they will delete it. Now this is a trade-off. I don't want the inconvenience of standing in that line, so I'm willing to give this information. I'll give you another trade-off that I guess you would all remember because you're all COVID children. During COVID, there was this app called Arogya Setu. Remember Arogya Setu? Okay. So Arogya Setu was a digital contact tracing app. The idea behind Arogya Setu was we will use Bluetooth technology to say that when one phone comes in contact close enough to another phone to exchange information, we know that you are close enough in contact to potentially have passed the COVID virus. And we will track this information because if one of you eventually gets COVID, I can then go and see all the people that you came in contact with so that I can then isolate all of them. It's a very good technology solution. I was invited to help build the Arogya Setu app and all my friends said, what is wrong with you? You're a privacy lawyer, you're going to build the most privacy destroying technology that has ever been built in this country. What is wrong with you? So I said, look, you can either sit outside and say don't build it and they'll build it anyway, or you can go inside and try and build it better such that it won't cause the harm. And so when I was in the team, I started discussing with them. I said, look, we all know that you can get COVID in 14 days, right? If you come in contact with someone and 14 days have passed and you don't get the symptoms, then you don't have COVID. So what if we delete all the data every 15 days? So I said, no, we don't know, it could be 18. So I said, what about 30 days? I said, okay. So the Arogya Setu app was built to delete information every 30 days. So if I met someone today, on the 31st day that information will be deleted. And at the end when Arogya Setu was sunsetted, 30 days after that, no information exists on anyone's phone. Now, the reason I mention this in the context of a trade-off is because the trade-off that you have to make here is, I don't know if it's going to work or not. As it happened, Arogya Setu did not work COVID was too complex a pandemic for any of these technologies to work. We all had to go through it, and then it eventually went away. But when you are making the technology, you have to understand what is the trade-off that you want. Do you want to create a surveillance state that will forever have this information, or do you want to collect the information that is necessary at the time? Whether it's good or not, we'll figure out, but how do you decide that? This is another trade. Now, this is the second trade-off, is the trade-off that I could make as a lawyer doing policy work. The first trade-off is the trade-off that you all make every day, and I will give you 100 examples of the things that you make. You're all on Instagram or Snap or one of these things. You all are, right? And if you all are on Instagram and Snap are collecting information about you to sell things to you, or to provide you reels that are going to make you feel good and go in one direction or the other direction. I know it. I find that the only thing in life that I am addicted to is Instagram reels. So much so, because I don't like to be addicted to anything, I have deleted Instagram off every device that I have, because I know that if I see it, I will lose an hour or two just scrolling through reels of cycling and coffee, because that's what Instagram knows I like. Cycling videos and how to make espresso coffee. And they show this to me morning, evening, and night, and I know I'm getting sucked into this machine, but I still sit there and I'm going on watching it. So the only solution for me is to delete the thing off my app and off my phone. I don't have it anywhere. So if you send me something on Instagram, guaranteed I will not read it. I'm just telling you now.
Just to wrap up this discussion and before moving on to the student Q&A, could you give us a little understanding about the context of AI and how the digital and legal landscape is going to change, and what should students keep in mind when they are in this era about their privacy, about their data, so on?
Okay, so I don't know if Kavita is going to like what I say, but there has been no technology more transformative since electricity than artificial intelligence. AI is going to fundamentally change everything that we know. And I'm very glad that you are all getting into it, unlike me, who has to now change, 30 years of my life. I've spent 30 years of my life working in a particular way, and now I feel I have to, relearn everything, because AI is going to fundamentally change everything. Now, AI in the last 3 to 4 months has been absolutely miraculous. I'm a lawyer who doesn't know how to code. I today have 2 apps in the App Store. On Claude Code, I must have 5 apps programs running. I'm building my own software for what I need to do at work. I write an article a week. I've written an article a week for 10 years. For the last year, every article I've written has been maybe 60-70%. Not written by AI, but I brainstorm with AI. And I find that AI takes me in paths that I would never have got to before. The last 2 weeks, I've been building an app which I can read something, put it into AI, and AI will tell me these are 5 new ideas for an article. Add this to the other 5 articles you shared with me the last 2 weeks. Put these 2 together, this is a great idea for an article. I don't agree with everything that AI says, but I find that it is useful to my process to do things. So, AI is going to fundamentally change the way we all work. I have already told my lawyers that I'm not going to sack anyone in the law firm, but I'm going to give them 10x the amount of work. Because AI is going to make you able to do 10 times more than you can currently do. And you just have to do it. And for you, AI will allow you to do things that I could never do. AI is going to open jobs and professions that didn't exist before. I'll give you a simple example. Before the mobile phone, before Steve Jobs invented the iPhone, if you had to go from place A to place B, what did you do? In Bangalore. You'd go to some place and you'd wait for an auto. Now, sometimes on the parallel street, there's an auto that's sitting there waiting for you. You don't know where the auto is, the auto doesn't know where you are. And you'd sit there and wait for hours saying there's no auto. Actually, there is an auto. The auto is just in the street behind you. So what did Steve Jobs do? Steve Jobs created a small computer, gave it to you, put it in your pocket. It put a GPS in that computer. It gave it to the taxi driver and gave it to you. And a guy called Travis Kalanick came up with an invention called Uber, which essentially used the GPS in the driver, used the GPS in the passenger, and brought demand to supply. Which means today you don't have to worry about whether there's a taxi or not. You can call the taxi. The Uber driver job did not exist before smartphones. How many jobs will AI create? So I am hugely optimistic about AI. And the thing is that I don't even know what to tell you. Because you are the ones who will be telling me what jobs will come in the future. I think all your teachers are going to have to learn from you. Because what is going to happen in the future is literally like electricity. Before electricity and after electricity, the world changed. Because before electricity, when the sun set, you had to go to sleep. There's a lovely book called The Last Days of Night, which talks about Thomas Edison and how when he lit up New York, that was the last day of night. And that's a powerful statement. And once there is no night, what you can do is infinite.
Thank you.
Two questions, and we can keep it warmed up with other questions as you guys think of it. Kabir. And I'd love to switch tracks in a few minutes to the setup of Trilegal as well.
Yeah, wherever you
But
want.
we'll first let the kids get through this track.
Gavi, I don't think the mic is working.
Can't hear.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you for the talk. It was very informative. I'm sure you've heard about AI deepfakes and how you can plaster someone's face onto a video completely unrelated to them. I just want to know how digital privacy laws is progressing in regards to the usage of people's faces, people's voices in AI-generated content, and how it affects them.
So, I don't want to disappoint you, but this is something that's been going on for a very long time. So ever since photographs, people have been able to do all sorts of manipulation of reality. So Photoshop, for example, did it just with images, right? So you could generate an image and morph someone's face on it or put them in a situation which is uncomfortable, and you couldn't tell what is real and what is not. What AI does is it makes it really easy. So for Photoshop, you had to be a Photoshop expert, then you had to clone it properly and do all of these things. If you didn't do it properly, anyone could look at it and say it's a fake. AI makes that really simple. AI will actually, if you know how to prompt it correctly, it will give you something completely real. The point I'm trying to make is that all new technology pushes the boundary of what was possible previously. It makes laws that used to work in the past not work well in the future, and we've got to push the boundary of the law. So I think it is certainly a worry, but we're never going to fix it, because we're going to have people who go underground with deepfakes and you won't be able to catch them. So then I go back to Photoshop and I say, how did we get past the Photoshop age? Because we still, get images. And the image doesn't have to be made by AI, it could be made by Photoshop, and we still consume images. So, historically, the only thing that has protected us from these sorts of manipulations has been what I call a healthy dose of skepticism. That's why I want conversations like this. Because we must understand what the technology can do and be skeptical when you see something. Chances are we can have laws to prevent deepfakes and we can do all of those things, but the best way to protect yourself is to protect yourself. And whenever I see an image, my mother used to send me all sorts of images, right? She'd see things on the internet and send it to me and say, is it real? And I would send it back and say, no ma'am, this is a Photoshop image. I now just have to do it for video. Now, of course, my mother doesn't send me anything because, like, I know you're going to tell me it's fake. And so she checks herself. And there are sites called Snopes and things like that, which are designed to actually give you a list of all the deepfakes. Alt News is a very good site in India that will give you a list of all, fake news. There are other ways to do it. And I think, it is a serious concern. But I don't think we can have a technology or a legal solution for it because we'll just push it underground.
So my question is about kind of the regulation of privacy. So if we look at countries like the UAE, which have really strict privacy laws, it can sometimes be constituted as going too far. So like recently, a British flight attendant is facing 2 years in jail because they took a photo of the smoke coming out from a missile strike. And they sent that to a private WhatsApp group asking if it was safe to go through the terminal of an airport. And because of that, they're facing criminal charges. So my question is, how do we demarcate the bounds of privacy, both being surveilled too much and too little, without compromising a reasonable degree of individual autonomy?
So each country has to try to find its own boundaries, right? So I would say the US is very chill about privacy. They don't really care. They're, anything goes. Europe is much more strict about privacy. Some countries are very aggressively strict, as you're saying, perhaps the UAE is. The thing is that laws are national, and the internet and global news makes it possible for us to read about laws around the world, but there's not much that we can do. We can only, in a sense, influence the laws in our country. And what our country chooses as the boundary of what is good and what is bad, what is excessive and what is not, is something that our country has to do. Now, one of the things I don't agree with what my country has done is that it is, and I'm sure it will affect all of you, is that in order to process the personal data of a child, in the data protection law, it says that you need verifiable parental consent. And child has been defined as someone under the age of 18. I'm presuming all of you are under the age of 18. Do you know what that means? You can't use Snap, you can't use Instagram, you can't use any of these things without your parents' consent. And all the apps are going to say now you can't do it. And I was opposed to that because I feel that children 15, maybe 13, depending on what the app is, it's okay for them to use certain apps. Maybe it's not okay for them to use certain other apps. But I was opposed to the 18 threshold. Now, in Europe it's 15, in the US it's 13. So you can say that that UAE photograph was across the line. Other people will say India's 18 is across the line, and every country draws its own lines everywhere. I fought the 18 rule for 3 years before it went up to Parliament, and I realized that the government was not going to change that. The government felt that if we say that 18 is the age of majority, then 18 should also be the age at which you can use social media. I mean, that's the government we elected. There's nothing I can do. I may have a view, but the elected representative of the people believe that that is what it is, and that is what it is.
Yeah, hi. So one part of your talk was about data when it comes to apps, how a majority of us don't actually read the privacy agreement. And there's a notion that it is the consumer's responsibility. But I feel like these companies deliberately package these privacy laws in such a convoluted way that none of us would have the time or be willing to put in the effort to read it. So don't you think that it is the companies or businesses' responsibility to give us these privacy laws in a convenient way that all of us, the layman, can understand?
And if they did, would you read it?
If it was in a convenient way, probably, because I don't think any of us are going to read
But,
those 47
but
pages.
if none of you have even clicked on the link for the privacy policy, you don't know, maybe some of them are super easy. Like the Arogya Setu privacy policy, I wrote it. It was 2 pages. It said we collect this information, we use this information, we delete this information. No one read it. And everyone would get on my case to say, why are you involved in this thing? I was like, read the privacy policy. So, I agree with what you're saying, right? But I think there is a more fundamental problem. And that is that I think consent, as much as I want you all to have control over what you do, to be able to consent for what it does and it doesn't, most of us don't. When you go to a new website, the website will say, accept cookies or not. Doesn't it say that? How many of you just say accept all and go through? It's easier, no? Because if you say manage, then you have to go through 3 other pages. They'll say this is necessary, that is not necessary. So, in the website case, you cannot enter into the website unless you've said 1 or 2. And actually it's super simple, because if you click manage your privacy, it will give you 3 options: necessary, not necessary, etc. We still don't do it. The reason why I think we don't do it is because I think consent is broken. Consent is broken because even though you think you're providing consent, you don't have enough information to know what the consent means. Right? So if you provide consent, do you know everything that the company is going to do? So I think you're onto something, but I think you haven't gone far enough. I don't think that the companies should be providing us easier privacy policies. I think the companies should be responsible for what they do with our data, and if they cause us harm, we should be able to punish them. I don't think they should be able to say, look, you consented, so I can do what I want. Because I consented to half information. There's no way I could have known all the information that happened. Cambridge Analytica is a case in point where I don't know what they did with the data that they gave to Cambridge Analytica. So is there, can we go a little further than just telling companies, give me a better privacy policy? I would urge you to push in that direction.
There's a question about privacy, a specific case on privacy. When we went to Madhya Pradesh, our expert told us about a case involving Dow Chemicals and a specific activist in America who released confidential documents about confidential information about Dow Chemicals monitoring and snooping on activists in India, and they had an entire company that was just working for them, and I think he was given he was put in jail for espionage. Can you give your views on this?
Gopal gas strategy.
So, look, and maybe I wasn't clear enough. There are many types of confidentiality that we need to worry about. Privacy covers personal information. Espionage covers corporate information. And in the scheme of the law, the courts think that companies are big enough to deal with their own, management of privacy, etc. And so there is a higher bar when it comes to doing corporate information and espionage. But for personal information, it would be there would be no sort of investigation, as it were, if someone was actually stealing and leaking personal information, which is information about you and me. And I'll give you a good example. You get calls from all sorts of spam companies, right? How do they get your telephone number? Someone has leaked the information. Now, in that same way, there are other things that they can leak. And those are the things that our data protection law goes after. Because I think the scheme of the law is way more dangerous, because the individual has no way to, Dow Chemicals will be able to fight. Dow Chemicals has the ability and the lawyers to fight, but poor individuals do not. And then how do we deal with that is the question.
Yeah, so I had a few questions, so I'll cut right to the chase. So you mentioned a hallmark proceeding in 2018.
Agastya, one question please. One question is what you get.
Oh, then
choose your best one.
Yeah, then I'd like to ask about the dangers of, the risks of using AI in law, because what about the fact that AI is often open source and companies may be able to breach client confidentiality? So what are your 2 cents in regards to how AI can be used to help lawyers, but to what degree AI should be used in a firm?
So AI as open source actually is a good thing, because if it's open source, I can download the AI and run it in my law firm, and so there's no breach of information, right? So in fact, I would prefer to use open weight AI models, because you can download them, put them on your server and use them. The problem is open weight models are not that good. They're better than they were, but they're not as good as Claude and ChatGPT. So my worry really is, how do I get my lawyers to be able to use the frontier models, Claude and ChatGPT, in a way that doesn't violate client confidentiality. And so, I mean, the only way to do this is to get the companies to agree to some sort of zero data retention policy, have Claude and Anthropic set up operations in India so that the data is here. But if that doesn't happen, we can't use it. That's the problem that any organization that deals with sensitive information has to face. And so that is a problem. But Claude definitely has a ZDR policy, which is a zero data retention policy, and it will give that to enterprises. And so once that happens, I know that Claude has none of my client information cryptographically guaranteed, and so I know I can use it.
You call it ZDR.
Zero data retention, ZDR.
Just a question, follow up on that. So the DPDP Act that is going to be in India, where does that place us globally in terms of data protection? And do these global platforms, will they be required to comply with that when they are acting in India?
Yeah, so the DPDP, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, is a global standard data protection law. The gold standard, so-called gold standard, I don't agree, is the European General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. And in the Indian law has pretty much everything that GDPR has, so it's very much an international standard. I think as I said, there are a few changes in India that that these international companies will have to comply with, and that is local languages, this 18-year thing, which is a big challenge for all of them, and a few things like that. There are specific things for India. But other than that, yes, all international companies that operate in India, whether they are registered in India, I mean, whether they, like for example, Facebook is based in California, but it has users in India. And because they have users in India, the DPDP Act will apply to them with regard to the users in India. And any company that operates like that will be obliged, even if they're not in India. Of course, any company that is in India and doing data processing in India will have to comply with it. So it's a big change. I keep telling my clients that this is a constitutional level law because it applies across sector. Every company has employees, and because they have employees, they have personal data employees, and it will apply. The school it will apply to your school. I mean, in fact, because there are children, it will apply to children in this more complicated way because if you collect personal data of children, you need verifiable parental consent. So as we went through this, it was actually quite challenging to explain to the government that, look, we need to make special allowances for schools because there's so much that schools are doing now that we want to allow them to continue to do. And there are things for safety, there are things for medical health, etc. We've got to allow them to do. So if you look at the rules and the regulations, you'll see there's a special exemption on the children's data thing, which really applies to activities in schools and things like that, which we managed to bring in through the rules and not in the main act. So it's a very wide-ranging and a very serious law.
So Karnataka has a requirement, sorry, we'll let you go next. Karnataka has a requirement now for students' data to be on their server. I can't remember what it's called, admissions people. What? Yeah, with the block, yeah, with BEO, but there's a particular requirement which is specific to Karnataka where they require all the data of students, because if we don't actually comply with that, they don't allow the student to get a transcript from the school. So we've had to put all of that data on there, and it's clear that it's not a enforceable law, but when the BEO has something, then it becomes enforceable for us as a school. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, look, I have...
How constitutional is that?
No, I have, since September 23 when this came into force, I've been spending a lot of time with government, trying to tell them that the way you do regulation doesn't align with this new law that you have passed. And I have spent time with the RBI, 5 meetings with the RBI, with SEBI, with various ministries, to try and get them to realign what they're doing here. Now, education tends to be state, and so it's a little harder for me to spread myself that thin, but it is certainly something that we have to do. Because you cannot enact a law which is in violation of your own law. And the Data Protection Act does allow a lot of exemptions for government, but you have to fit within that exemption. And that exemption is typically for things like investigation of a crime or something like that. So this doesn't qualify. You can't just keep information. So, I mean, I don't know the details. I'm not going to comment in specific, but I'm commenting in general in that the government needs to understand all the things that it needs to do to comply with its own law. And I think that's a learning that we have to do. I mean, even after the law comes into force, May 27, the law is going to come into force. I suspect we're going to see a lot of cases that are filed, and a lot of the cases will be against the government. The government has already told me we are the largest data fiduciary in the country. We have more personal information than any other organization. And so we need to get our act together. So the government is committed to it. I mean, to be completely clear, the government understands it. Every time I go and speak to them, they're like, yes, we have to get this, help me do this, etc., etc. So I mean, this is the first time we're having a law like this in the country.
But it puts center and state at a very different kind of position compared with all of the other.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we must find a solution. So I don't know why they want it, but whatever the reason they want it, there is a more privacy-preserving way to do it. And I think that's always been my approach, to try and understand what the government is trying to achieve. And they have taken like a sledgehammer to do it. I'm like, you can do a scalpel and get the same thing, you can get the same result. Tell me what your result is, and we can find a way to do it, which is privacy preserving. So that's the effort, and I think that's the way we have to engage with them.
One last question on the, the privacy stuff before we switch tracks. I know you guys have to get out at 10. Go ahead, bro. Who has it, Shreya? Go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for coming. My question is regarding the Data Protection Act itself. So I want to know what was the process, the overall process of creating it, the stage, like what were the type of stages, like how many people worked on the act, and even like how does it, like what's the plan to enforce it and like mitigate public backlash for an act like this?
So it's a very long process. So as I said, right at the beginning, 2012, I was involved in an early draft. That draft was with the DOPT, Department of Personnel and Training. It came through various committees, and then government changed. Then we had the case, and so Justice Sri Krishna, who's a retired judge of the Supreme Court, constituted a committee, and that committee came up with a draft. Many rounds of consultation. That draft was submitted. The Ministry of Information Technology came up with another draft. That draft was circulated for public consultation. It went to the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Joint Parliamentary Committee came up with yet another draft. Went through a whole bunch of consultations. That was during COVID, so that took another year. I was made to testify in Lok Sabha during COVID. I said, look, it's COVID, I'm not coming. They said, we will send an arrest warrant to you, you have to come. You have to basically show up when the Parliament asks you. And then Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said that this is not working, and he scrapped the whole law. And he started afresh with a brand new law, and that was a very simple law, which is the law that we have, passed through Parliament, both houses of Parliament, and that's become a law. Last year, the rules were notified, and the time period for the law coming into force was notified. Now it's going to come into force on May 2027. And then we have a full-blown law. In the middle, we're going to have to create a data protection board, which is the sort of regulator for the area. So to answer your question on enforcement, that's how it's going to work. There's not going to be a regulator, but there's going to be a court-like body to which you can, if you have a complaint, and maybe this question around the schools, we can issue a complaint to say that, how is the government of Karnataka complying with this law? And then the board will decide yes or no. Is this okay or is this not? And that's the way it will go.
All right, so...
Dhruv gets one last, because he didn't have his hand up earlier. Dhruv, call it out, tell me.
Yeah, so recently Meta announced that they'll be removing encryption for all Instagram messages, and I wanted to know how privacy policymakers would be approaching dealing with such a drastic change. I mean, Meta also owns WhatsApp, and encryption is the most appealing part of even using WhatsApp in the first place. So how would privacy policymakers approach either legislation regarding this? How do they deal with companies removing? Because Meta wants to train its AI on the messages that Instagram users send. So I want to know how policymakers approach that, and whether consumers should switch to other apps like Signal, which are more encrypted.
I use Signal. So, I mean, the point is that you can never tell a company what it ought to do. Because a company will do what it needs to do for its shareholder interests. And so if Meta decides to take end-to-end encryption of Instagram and of WhatsApp, there's really nothing we can do. One thing we can do is get off WhatsApp. Or actually, WhatsApp makes them no money, so get off Instagram, which actually makes them money. And then maybe they will. But you can't get everyone off, and a lot of people don't really care about privacy the way you do. They're like, it's okay, I have nothing to lose, let them read it, doesn't matter, I'm getting a free service. I am not on WhatsApp. I moved to Signal. I mean, I'm on WhatsApp infrequently for this very reason. I worry that at some point in time, end-to-end encryption will go, and it's the way I work. I'm not only on Signal, I'm on a whole bunch of other apps that are so secret that I won't tell you, because if you make it popular, then it will become like WhatsApp, and then I'll have to find another app to get onto. So that's the way I use my life.
So just switching tracks a little bit, you've made choices of the institution that you built, Trilegal, which are very different from other law practices in India. We've not had large law practices like that, other than those family-owned Amarchand Mangaldas and AZB. I don't think comes yet as a family practice. But you built a legal practice which by revenue is today the largest, and even by number of lawyers is probably first, second, third in the country. 3,000 lawyers?
No, 1,300 lawyers. But
1,300 lawyers?
Yeah.
So that's a huge number. Could you talk a little bit about the choices and why this large institution building? How is it different from those small local law practices that seem to be so much more prevalent in India? Could you also talk about some of your choices personally on how you, as a professional, as an individual, the kind of choices that you make? I know you give back to society hugely. It's not just high-profile tech law that you do. You also fund books and writing and things like that. You serve on boards. So if you could talk a little bit about those choices of institutional building and community building, if you don't mind.
Okay, you're embarrassing me deeply, but I will tell you briefly about the firm, right? So the firm set up set up in 2000, so we're 26 years old, which is relatively young for a law firm. We're 1,300 lawyers now, 150, more than that. We just added 6 new partners, so we have 156 lawyers now, partners now. The difference between the other law firms in India, the older law firms, there are many new younger law firms that are different, is that there is no separate benefit for the founders of the firm. So everyone is equal. Every partner who starts small can rise to be and earn as much equity as I do as a founder, and many do. Right now, at this point in time, the total founder percentage of the equity is single digits, right? So we're in the region of all the founders put together have 7% of the equity of the firm. Why we do this is because we believe that everyone, on the basis of merit, should be able to rise absolutely to the highest position that is possible in the organization. This is very different from the way a company is set up, because a law firm is an association of professionals, and each professional has their own team, and if that professional is successful, then the overall firm will be successful. So we typically, grow our revenue in the region of 20 to 30% per annum, right? And that's growth, year-on-year revenue growth. So that's not possible if you don't allow every individual profit center the full freedom to do whatever they want. And the one way to do that is to say, if you leverage all the partners, the skills of all the partners around you, and you focus on what you do really well. So I'm a technology lawyer, and I do technology law, but I have a partner who is a specialist in fighting cases between the airport and the government. Airports and government, that's how specialized he is. Every private airport which has an issue with it, he is the one who fights. I have another one who has fought the case for the Great Indian Bustard that got hit with the electricity poles in Rajasthan, right? And so we have specialists in that. We've got many, many micro specialists. And it's only possible because the way the firm operates is we allow every individual to build their own practice in the way that they want, and so we just finished partner selections. We added 6 new partners. These are people, one of them has worked with me since he joined as an intern 10 years ago, and he's now become a partner. I have every hope that he will rise to the top of the equity, which means at some point in time he will earn exactly as much as I do. The way it works is the moment he becomes a partner, I give him my clients and I'm like, take my clients, build with it, and I go out and get some more clients because I'm senior and I can get it. He's young, he needs the clients, and then he will eventually get his own clients. So it's a very collaborative environment, and that's how we got to this place. Just very briefly on the other thing that Kavita said, it's no, I mean, look, I find that I have a unique intersection, which is law, technology, and society. I've been doing this for a very long time, and the more I look out into the world, I find there are fewer and fewer people who can understand this intersectionality well. And so I just feel it's important for me to give back in that direction. And so I do a lot of work with the government on policy, on sort of trying to shape these directions and things like that. And I think, I don't know, I mean, we can make a lot of money. I already have made a lot of money. I think I'll be very happy, and you can always make more money, I guess. I could buy an island if I wanted. I can keep working till I get an island, or buy a few private jets. But what's the point, quite frankly?
You already have your little island now.
I have, yes, a little one, yes. But once you have a little oasis of some sort, there's no need to go on. And at some point in time, you've got to think about what you give back. And so you have to give back.
Yeah. Okay, students. So we are concluding this session. Yes. Can I have your attention? Yeah. We would like to thank Mr. Rahul to come here and speak to us about privacy, about data protection. But also we thank him and we take away the fact that there's certain responsibility that we have. We can't always rely on companies to make it easy for us. So with that, in a while, can you please give us a round of applause? Yeah. All right. So can we exit the hall row by row?
And as usual, if some of you really have some dying questions, please come and ask. Don't get stuck in that loop of